Universal Pictures is back with a second Dracula movie of the year after the enjoyable Renfield with Nicolas Cage as Dracula. This time it's the last voyage of the Demeter. The movie starts out with saying it's based on Captain's Log from Stoker's novel. That's not true. In the novel, it's called The Log of the Demeter, I believe it was. I've read it a couple times because I've written a couple Dracula scripts. This movie feels like a movie that was trapped in development hell for years, and Universal was just like, get it out by any means necessary at this point. At one point, Marcus Nispel was attached, David Slade was attached, Neil Marshall was attached, acting-wise. Viggo Mortensen was attached to lead the movie. Jude Law was attached to lead the movie at one point. And instead, we got the director of the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I have a review of on this channel. That is a fantastic supernatural psychological body horror film. He followed that up with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which he teamed up with Guillermo del Toro on that one. And while visually the movie is very impressive and hits a lot of those same notes of the books I read growing up, structurally the story is flawed from the jump, which the movie doesn't hold together. I feel like it should have been an anthology movie. Instead, it went the route of the Goosebumps movies with Jack Black. But I digress. So he's come on to take over this movie, which is, it's just a few sentences in Stoker's novel about the ship that carries Dracula to Carfax Abbey. In the same way that they made like 13 Children of the Corn movies, which are based on like a 20-sentence long Stephen King short story. So, and they keep saying based on a short story. I was like, no, we stopped being based on a short story way back in the Linda Hamilton one in '84. This movie is essentially Alien on a boat. It's not quite Speed 2 Cruise Control, which flips a bus for a boat. It's got a little bit of Alien 3. It's got a lot of The Thing. And it also sort of could serve as a prequel to Neil Marshall's The Descent, from the look of the vampire. You have Liam Cunningham, who I knew best from, again, Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers, which you've never seen Dog Soldiers before. That's a fucking badass werewolf war movie. The lead actor is played by the guy who I was trying to figure out what I knew him from. I was like, oh, he was Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton. And he was also on the 24 reboot, and he was also in Kong Skull Island, which I enjoyed. It's, Dracula is in a box, and he's put on a boat, and we meet a bunch of characters, and then Dracula comes out of the box, and Dracula's it up, and this is the kind of movie that I'm going to forget about pretty much as soon as I push stop on this video. It suffers from many problems, aside from just the fact that this story has been told better and could have been told better. Like, just a little tiny piece of Bram Stoker's Dracula that Coppola directed handled this much better. Dracula is just a CGI character, and that's why I said it looks a lot more like it could have been The Descent, because they do look like the Batmen in that movie, in the Spelunking movie, mixed almost with like Gollum as well from Lord of the Rings. It's a CGI character. It lacks weight. So anytime that he could be a threat when he's attacking on the cramped confines of the boat, or dockside where you're surrounded by water on all sides, you can't go anywhere. It just feels silly, The actors are doing what they can with the material that they're given. A big problem with the movie is that the fact that the basic geography of the boat has almost a Simpsons Springfield vibe to it, where nothing is ever in the same place as it was before, and it's kind of hard to, like in Alien or The Thing or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Night of the Living Dead, anything where people are confined to a space, we need to know the rules of that space. You know, and you know, you've got the movie does the one thing I said is like, all right, they're gonna let the kid live, and they didn't do that. The kid died, which I thought was great because the captain brings his grandson aboard, Toby, and he dies. But I thought they wasted an opportunity to do like a really cool Salem's Lot kind of vibe with it when the kid is a vampire and the grandfather won't let them throw him overboard. He does come to life and gets burned up, but it's kind of silly looking. It would have been cool if you know, you saw him tapping on the port window, sort of like the kid tapping on the window in this Toby Hooper Salem's Lot. You set up a bunch of characters who are given some personality, but then just kind of vanish. You know, oh, this guy is angry, and this guy just wants his share of the delivery, and oh, this guy is religious. But then they just kind of become interchangeable after a while. It's also very hard to see the movie, and I don't know if it was just the projection at the exhibitor screening I went to today was just dark, but the movie is at times very difficult to see, and not in a good way, not in like the first time we see Christian Bale's Batman in Dark Knight, or the Predator the first time, you know, where he's hiding in kind of plain sight. This is more like the movie is very murky. And while there is some visual flair to it, because again, I think this director is a great visual storyteller, this just felt like the kind of movie that at this point the studio's like, dude, we've tried so many things and this hasn't worked. Just get it out there for the summer. It doesn't matter what it looks like at this point. They also the Dr. Dre's character, not really Dr. Dre, but the guy who played Dr. Dre. He's a medical doctor who is you know, he's black. I was gonna say African American, but he's British, so African British black guy. Sorry if that came off as offensive. I was just thinking about a Venture Brothers joke where he's like, you kill African American vampires. He's like, no, I kill British ones too. Like he's like their Blade character. He's in the story basically to become like the Abraham Van Helsing character, which is kind of lame because in Stoker's novel, Van Helsing is more of just a blood doctor who gets involved in this kind of thing and has to balance science with folklore. You have a familiar which is brought into the story. She's inside the box and they have to give her blood transfusions. They kind of mess with their own logic on what we know the next progression in the story is going to be. He has to land in England at the Demeter as to be a ghost ship for him to get to England to have Dracula take place, the novel and the movie, you know. And the way it kind of plays out is he becomes like this whole other hunter character by the end of it, and I thought that was kind of silly. The girl as well, she's only there just so they can say, oh yeah, his name's Dracula, and he lives in a castle, and this. Like, it's just this, like, shoehorned in way of getting to checking those boxes, because we do get to a certain point where it goes from being a period drama, you know, to just checking the boxes of what you need for mainstream audiences to go, oh, Dracula, okay, I know that. You know, it's kind of cool, though. One thing I will give it is when he is in full bat form, when he kind of like cocoons people and you see their like faces or hands pushing through the you know, the webbing of the wings. That was kind of a neat visual, and there's some beautiful imagery in it when it comes to the storms at sea and having this kind of dark ride, kind of haunted house kind of style to it. But again, it's so little so late that it doesn't feel like it's doing anything other than just being on autopilot, and occasionally giving us an interesting visual is not enough for something like this. Like, I almost was watching it and feeling like, fuck, you could have done this as like a science fiction movie almost, and just retold it through you know, a spaceship instead, with like a space Dracula almost, you know, like Dracula 3000. I just went back and watched Dracula 2000 again, and I forgot just how fucking awful but also like hilariously 2000 that movie is. I don't know. Yeah, this is just a movie that I'm gonna forget as soon as I'm done with this video. It's too bad because, again, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, The Invisible Man, all of these gothic horror novels that shaped so much of myself growing up. You know, you watch the movies. Dracula is like the most filmed character in all of pop culture history. Like, I think it's like him and Sherlock Holmes are like the two most filmed characters. And I saw it with the owner of my theater's son, and was kind of explaining to him the Dracula myth. He's like, wait, you can go out in the sun, and what's with the dirt, and explaining all that stuff to him, because I'm a big fucking nerd like that. But you could pass on this one, even if you're a big Dracula fan. I just don't see audiences being interested in this movie. The gore is fairly muted. The monster looks silly. You know, even when they get to England at the end, and where the Dracula story would pick up. Now Dr. Dre is essentially Van Helsing, and the same CGI bat monster is now just wearing a top hat, and that's that. I felt like there's ways you could have done this. There's other ways you could have told this story that they opted not to, just to get something out. And it kind of sucks that this filmmaker is not given a chance to do more, like he did with the Autopsy of Jane Doe. Again, because there were things I really liked the look of in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but just to make it this, it's a book. And there's a girl, and you know, and now these things are out. It's like, okay, that already happened. We already did that with Goosebumps. You know, why? Now you're just going to include a draft dodger from Vietnam. That's it. That's what we're going to make it different. I like the practical creatures in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, though. But beyond that, I just I don't know. This one just left me very cold, and very like wanting to go back and watch better Dracula movies. You know, Frank Langella's Dracula, Lugosi's Dracula. You know, that they handle this material much better than this one does, and it felt like I pretty much could have told you all of the things that were going to happen in this before they happen, and I was right about everything except for they did kill the kid and they did kill the dog. There were two things I thought that they weren't going to do because they weren't going to have the balls to. Nick Cage should have been Dracula in this one. Renfield was much better. Yeah, I don't know. This is a pretty low energy one for me because I was actually looking forward to this. I've been hearing about this movie again for a very long time, going back to Marcus Nispel, who left it to do the Friday the 13th remake, and David Slade, who left it to do what was going to be a 1970s kind of gritty version of Daredevil. You know, other actors who have a bit more star cachet. Oh, you know who's in this movie? The dude who played Polka Dot Man in the newest Suicide Squad movie. He's also in The Dark Knight. He was on The Flash as Alakazam or Abracadabra. He was in the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. And Bear McCready did the music, who also did the music for the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. Not a fan of that movie. But McCready's scores are usually pretty fantastic. He was replacing someone else on this one, and it's very pedestrian. It's very paint by numbers in a lot of places, things that we've heard before, seen before. So it doesn't really add much to anything. But the dude who played Polka Dot Man was also in Oppenheimer. I forgot to mention that he was in that. Just like in my Haunted Mansion review, I forgot to mention that Winona Ryder was in it, so I put it in the description. But he's been popping up in everything recently, and he's a great actor. I like that he's like so steeped into horror movies and comic book writing, and been involved. He's in Ant-Man as like the European or the Russian guy that he was friends with in the first two. So he's done a lot of cool stuff, and he's becoming a better known actor. And it was cool to see him pop up in Oppenheimer. But then to be in this, you didn't really know it was him at first because he gained a little bit of weight and he had a beard. But I guess that's what character actors do. Beyond that, I don't know. This could have been a lot more interesting to have these people trapped at sea with Dracula, and to just have him be this CGI character instead of using the fact that he could be mist, the fact that he could be rats, the fact that he could be a bat, the fact that he could appear as the old man or the young man. The mythology could be played with a little bit more. They have the seal of the dragon, the Dragul, on the box, and that's really the only time they ever go with that. And the religious guy, I feel like there's a scene where they go, oh, dragons are a bad omen, but you could have played a little bit more into that. And if you're going to bring this girl in who's going to wake up inside the box, and she's a familiar, but really, like, Dracula's powers only work on her when it's convenient for the story, just so she could give us the exposition on shit that we already know about Dracula. So is a big old pass from me. I was pretty bummed out by it. Thankfully, Vampire, the Van of Dracula that I wrote, is being made this fall in Alabama with Jeffrey Parker and New Vision Films. So, and then I have Jaws Ferratu written as well. That was going to be made by Screenwave Media, but they it was called Sharkula at the time. But then they held that one up, and so that the Polonias could make theirs. So I just changed the title of it and took out all their notes that they were trying to make it like a kids movie almost, and turned it back into something that kind of pays homage to exploitation Dracula movies that would have come out that like are just cashing in on the name, like the Hound of Dracula is that one, and Dracula versus Frankenstein that Al Adamson, Sam Sherman did. Like everything I do is kind of like it in the same way that like sequels to Children of the Corn say based on a short story. It's like, okay, well, the things that I'm writing are aware that the novel exists, but then they just kind of do their own thing within all those margins because I'm a highly functional idiot. But yeah, you could skip this one. You could check it out when it comes to streaming services. It's Universal, so it may pop up on like Amazon or Prime or something like that. Really not worth going to the theater for, and it's kind of a bummer. You could have done something a lot cooler, but if you keep that look, this could very well be how the Batman creatures get to the caves in Neil Marshall's The Descent, and The Descent is a fucking badass claustrophobic movie that uses its dark setting and minimalistic characters and isolation way better than this movie does. So that's it for me. This is the last voyage of me watching The Last Voyage, because I don't think I ever need to see this one again. Not the worst movie I've seen all summer, just it's another one of those movies that just, like Haunted Mansion, forgot about it by the time I was done talking about it.